Welcome to Maple States, where we break down the real shifts reshaping global trade and supply chains in 2025. This year, the United States triggered one of the most disruptive trade waves the automotive and manufacturing world has seen in decades. New tariffs, some reaching as high as 50% on steel, aluminum, vehicles, and key industrial components, sent immediate shockwaves through global supply networks. Assembly lines slowed, contracts froze, and exporters scrambled for alternatives. But while Washington tightened its grip, 7 countries made a decisive move. Instead of waiting out the uncertainty, they rerouted trade away from the US and toward Canada, forming new alliances that are quietly redrawing the global automotive map. Today, we're walking through those 7 strategic pivots and what they reveal about where the industry is heading next. Number 7 begins in South America. In early 2025, Brazil's agricultural and biofuel exports were hit with a sudden 25% US tariff, putting billions in annual revenue at risk. Beef producers, soy exporters, and ethanol suppliers faced stalled shipments and mounting losses almost overnight. Rather than absorb the hit, Brazil moved quickly. By March, Brazilian exporters finalized a multi-billion-dollar supply shift with Canadian buyers. Beef shipments were redirected to western provinces. Soy volumes were rebalanced through prairie logistics hubs, and ethanol supplies were rerouted to eastern Canada. The move stabilized Brazilian production, protected thousands of rural jobs, and created new demand across Canadian processing facilities. Brazil then extended the strategy further by expanding ethanol byproduct exports into Asia, proving that diversified trade lanes could outperform dependence on any single market. Next up, Mexico. When the U.S. imposed a 35% tariff on Mexican auto components, the impact was immediate across Mexico's manufacturing corridor. Plants producing suspension systems, electronics, and drivetrain parts faced order cancellations and production slowdowns. Within weeks, Mexico pivoted north, formalizing an expanded production and logistics alignment with Canada. Auto parts that once flowed south into the U.S. were rerouted into Ontario's assembly ecosystem. Canadian plants in Windsor, Brampton, and surrounding regions absorbed new volumes, keeping Mexican factories operating and Canadian lines moving. While regulators monitored supply chain compliance closely, the shift highlighted how regional cooperation could shield industrial jobs from tariff shocks without dismantling production capacity. Before we continue, if you value clear, fact-based reporting on how trade and industry are really changing, make sure to subscribe to Maple States. It helps us keep delivering detailed analysis without the noise. At number 5, Australia. Australia's resource sector felt the pressure when U.S. tariffs were applied to critical minerals, including iron ore and lithium. These materials are foundational to steelmaking and electric vehicle production, and the tariffs threatened long-term contracts almost instantly. Australia responded by strengthening its trade corridor with Canada. Bulk shipments of iron ore were redirected through Canadian ports, supporting domestic steel output at a moment when supply security mattered most. At the same time, Australian lithium producers partnered with Canadian manufacturers involved in electric transit and battery processing. The result was continuity for Australia's mining workforce and a more resilient upstream supply for Canada's growing EV sector. Number 4 takes us to Europe. France's hydrogen technology industry encountered serious disruption after U.S. tariffs targeted electrolyzers and clean energy components. Orders were paused, projects delayed, and skilled manufacturing jobs placed at risk. In response, France and Canada finalized a new infrastructure partnership focused on hydrogen production and deployment. French technology was redirected into Canadian projects, preserving jobs at home while creating new technical roles across Canada. The collaboration aligned with France's long-term hydrogen capacity goals and accelerated Canada's own clean energy ambitions, showing how climate strategy and trade realignment increasingly overlap. At number 3, South Korea. South Korea's battery manufacturers faced export bottlenecks when tariffs were applied to lithium-ion modules bound for the U.S. market. Rather than slow production, major Korean firms shifted deliveries toward Canadian facilities tied into the North American EV supply chain. Battery modules were redirected to Canadian assembly hubs, supporting electric vehicle production while maintaining scale for Korean manufacturers. The shift protected thousands of specialized jobs and expanded Canada's role as a downstream battery and EV manufacturing base. It also reinforced South Korea's position as a global battery leader by keeping innovation pipelines active despite trade disruptions. Number 2 brings us to Denmark. Denmark's renewable energy sector was hit by tariffs on wind turbine components, halting several US-bound projects. Instead of cutting output, Danish firms redirected exports toward Canadian renewable developments. New agreements funneled turbine components into Atlantic and Prairie provinces, supporting clean energy expansion while stabilizing Danish manufacturing employment. The pivot allowed Denmark to continue advancing its offshore wind strategy while strengthening Canada's renewable infrastructure at a critical moment in the energy transition. And finally, number 1, Germany. Germany's automotive industry encountered one of its biggest challenges when U.S. tariffs targeted vehicles and auto parts simultaneously. Faced with potential production losses, German manufacturers negotiated a comprehensive realignment with Canada. Auto components were redirected under preferential frameworks, keeping Canadian assembly lines supplied and German factories running. Alongside this, Germany expanded cooperation with Canada on hydrogen and clean energy sourcing, reinforcing long-term energy security for its industrial base. The dual-track strategy protected jobs, stabilized supply chains, and underscored Germany's emphasis on adaptability over confrontation. Together, these 7 shifts reveal a broader reality taking shape in 2025. U.S. tariffs didn't just disrupt trade, they accelerated diversification. Countries that moved fastest didn't retreat. They rerouted. Canada emerged as a central hub not because of confrontation, but because of stability, predictability, and open industrial partnerships. For the automotive world, this realignment signals a future where flexible supply chains and trusted trade lanes matter more than ever. Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these shifts do you think will have the biggest long-term impact on global auto manufacturing? And do you see this trend toward Canada continuing as trade tensions evolve? Share your thoughts in the comments. This is Maple States. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more clear analysis on the forces reshaping global trade.